you did something, you thought something, you said something, whatever it may be, that was valued by the person bestowing respect. Owed respect is irrespective of an observer,
Yeah,
right?
that's as you're talking about that, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's almost like a universal, whereas the earned is like
It's contingent
based
on
on
the
the
observer.
viewer's value system. You've earned this because this is what I consider valuable.
Welcome to Science of Leadership, the podcast dedicated to helping you become a better leader. Here, you'll gain valuable knowledge, hear inspiring stories, and learn the scientific principles that promote exceptional leadership. I'm Tom Collins, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Justin Hamrick, and we are thrilled to have you join us on this journey to becoming a better leader. Justin, today's episode is going to be one that's, I think, timely and timeless with regard to the topic. And the idea of it came from a recent conversation I had with my son, and that's the importance of treating people with dignity and respect. I think it's timely because our society is at a critical point where treating people with dignity and respect is, from my perspective, sorely lacking. And it's timeless, I think, because we all want to feel dignity. We all want to feel like we're respected. So I think this is going to be a challenging and hopefully rewarding conversation. So as we dive into this, Justin, when you think of treating people with dignity and respect, what comes to mind?
I'll take them separately. When I think about dignity, like the first thing that pops in from being in medicine is you think about a nursing home facility, someone who
Hmm.
is older, maybe is incapacitated, but then you still treat that person like a human, like you would your grandmother or grandfather. Look, when I think about dignity, that's what I think about. Like you do not treat someone less than human, irregardless of where they are in life, what capacity they have, how they fit into the system, whatever. Respect, I always talk about same with you. I think about this with my children. Like, regardless of what that person matters to you, you need to treat everyone with respect. My son had a baseball lesson the other day, and they told him to do something, and he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Nope, nope. Yes, coach. Yes, coach." Like, it's that respect of not only their position in the organization or in your life, but the respect of them as a person, like what they've been through, what they've done. Like, they are a person that deserves respect. When I think about those 2 things, that's sort of what I think about. What about you?
I agree with you. I think that they are different, and I'll kind of split them out. I'll talk about respect first, and people have written on this. There are two principal forms of respect.
Mm,
There's what's called earned respect, which is this sort of feeling of deep admiration for someone due to abilities, qualities, achievements, things of that nature. For instance, we might say we respect Mother Teresa for her compassion, kindness, and service. We might say we respect Michael Jordan for his accomplishments as a basketball player. So that's the earned kind of respect. In academics and medicine and things, we often respect someone because of their accomplishments in their field, publications they may have had, things of that nature. And the other form of respect, which you're hitting on, is what is referred to in the literature as owed respect, which is having due regard for the feelings, wishes, rights, traditions, whatever it may be, of other people. In a real sense, it's respecting or honoring others for their humanity.
it
I
seems
think
like
you're
almost the second one is probably the one that gets left out the easiest or the most often. Like, I mean, I think like the examples you gave, like Michael Jordan, like he walks into a restaurant, everyone's going to sort of be in awe. Like everyone equally values his accomplishments. Whereas the second one, it's not as, I don't want to say universally accepted, but I think it's probably the one that leaders and people who don't value as universally. Do you think that's the case?
Absolutely, I think that's the case, and this was the genesis of the conversation I had with my son. We were talking about respect, and before I dive into that story, let me get to the definition of dignity that I think about, and that's this state or quality of being worthy of
Mm,
respect. All people have dignity. All people, by the nature of their humanity, we should respect the people, from that standpoint, and everybody has dignity. And back to this story of the conversation with my son, we were talking about respect and how important that is in life, treating other people with respect, dignity and respect. And that what I told him was that this is one of the most important lessons that came away from my study and work that led to the book. So many 4 stars talked about treating people with dignity and respect. And I confess that in my life, for a very long time, the large majority, until not too long ago, I withheld respect because I felt like people need to earn it.
Hmm. The number one part of respect that you talked about.
Just respect, period. Like if you
Yeah.
ask me, do you respect someone? Well, why should I? They haven't earned it.
Hmm.
And that's a terrible place. Like that's wrong. And I can admit that. That's that what I was a fool for having that, but my son was falling into the same grouping.
Hmm.
I said, well, okay, what is it based on your criteria? If you're going to be the arbiter of respect, what is it that you use to measure whether or not somebody receives respect from you, right?
You asked him this?
Yeah, I asked him.
Oh.
And he said, and he thought about it and he said, achievement, leadership, character, intellect. Those were the 4 things that he cited. I said, okay, if that's the case, what kind of character is it? What level of character is it for someone else to dangle over another person this idea of respect and say, you only get this if you live up to my standard?
Mm.
What level of character is that?
Wow.
And we sat in silence for probably 10 minutes while he's running through the permutations of how to get out of this, right?
How can I answer this correctly?
Right. And he finally was like, okay, checkmate, you got me. And I said, I'm asking because that was me. I'm not pointing the finger at you. That was me. I was the one, because I know that he respects me, right? But if character is a part of that calculus and it equals 0 and it's multiplicative, let's say, then it's 0, right? Respect should be 0, but that's not the case. So anyway, that allowed us to get to this idea that everyone, I think, carries the signature of divine, right? Like there's something innate about us as humans that we should respect that. That doesn't mean we have to respect them as a leader or as a basketball player or as an artist or podcaster or whatever it is. But as a human, we should respect them. And I think that this gets to what you're saying about the disconnect in our society, right? Like we have honoring people who've accomplished something and we honor them over the most ridiculous things, fame, celebrity, really, right? Undeserved celebrity. But then we tear each other apart over various things. We don't respect the right of other people to have an opposing opinion. And we don't take the time to stop and say, this person has a perspective they do for a reason. I need to respect their right to be wrong. I mean, you're a Georgia fan. I respect your right to be a Georgia fan, even if I don't agree with it, I respect that.
I heard a quote the other day that's so apropos here. They're like, if you were born into the same situation as another person and lived their same life, understand that you would come to the same conclusions that they did. And that really hit me in the face of like, you're right. Like, these are not people that are just, they've lived a different life, had different experience, and that's how they've come to a very logical conclusion. I want to go back to something you mentioned previously that I think is really interesting, that in interviewing these people for your book, these very highly ranked people in an organization that demands respect of senior leadership, that what they're saying is that the people below them, quote unquote, below them, you need to have respect for. That is interesting that the people in the place where they would be receiving all the respect are the people who are like, no, no. What a true leader does is respect those that they're leading. Those are the people that they have respect for. That's fascinating in interviewing all these people. That's sort of the takeaway from that. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's vitally important for successful leadership, is that we understand that all these people they offer something if we are willing to take a moment and consider it, right? If we respect the fact, here's somebody who has a perspective that's different than mine, right? Because just as you were saying, they grew up in a different circumstance and so on. So their perspective is different, and that can give us a more complete understanding of any given situation, the more perspectives we have, right? Because we're not limited by our singular view. I think that's this idea of inclusion in that has gotten a bad rap, I think, in different domains in society at this point. I think the reason is because fundamentally we've had a breakdown of understanding that people have intrinsic value.
So what was the take home point you gave to your son at the end of this conversation where you sort of asked him who deserved respect, like, what was the take-home point you gave him that honestly, what you're asking is, if I could go back 30 years and talk to myself, what would I say? Like, what's the take-home point that you gave him that you wish you could have told yourself 30 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, well, first, let me say that the way I approached it was from a coaching mindset. So I
Mm,
wasn't telling him, right? Like I was just asking questions to get him to think. And
great point.
I was doing my best to not ask leading questions, you know? And so he arrived at this reality that yes, everyone deserves respect. That I'm not, he, any of us have no right to say that there's this, that we set the standard for what does and doesn't earn respect. Everybody is due respect because of the signature of divine, right? And so he took that away from this conversation that he needs to reorient. And I think that I was just thinking about this and reading about this idea. One thing that we run into in society, I think, is almost this sense of we have a bucket of respect, and if we dole out respect to certain people, then our bucket runs dry eventually.
Mm,
So we reserve it.
only so much to give.
Right, but it's not that way at all. It's
Mm,
actually infinite in a sense. But I think that the more you give, the more you have to give, right? So it's not like you just got a deep bucket, because if you don't give any out, your bucket remains a certain depth. But the more you give out, the more wells up, I think.
it's almost like a habit, almost like a habit of practice. If you give out respect, like, you're more likely to receive it, and you're more likely to give it out when it is what you would consider truly due. I mean, you're right. You've got more to give. You give it out, and you've got more to give. That's a fantastic point.
And it doesn't hurt us. It doesn't diminish us
Mm,
to respect other people. We think that, I think this is me speaking from a bygone mindset, that respect is you've earned it. It's all earned respect, right? And that it's like a token. Hey, you made it in this club, this elite club of mine where I respect people, and somehow that makes us better, but it actually diminishes us
mm,
because we're saying that we don't understand the intrinsic value in others.
true.
Hey, I'm breaking into the podcast conversation here to share with you an exciting announcement. If you've been following the Science of Leadership podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about the book I've been working on. Well, I'm delighted to share that after over 3 years of work, my book, The 4 Stars of Leadership, is finally available. I'm so proud of this book and what it represents. I'm certain that you're going to find it immensely interesting and helpful as a guide on your journey to becoming a better leader. Seriously, you don't want to miss this book. I'm including a link to the book in the description. I hope you'll order your copy today. And please share it with others who might be interested. Also, please be sure to share your thoughts about the book with me. Now, let's get back to this interesting conversation on the science of leadership.
We always sort of talk about the science of this. Like, we've sort of really talked about a lot of, like, what our opinions are, which I don't think are invalid. Like, I think we've really gotten there. But, like, what's the science behind dignity and respect? Like, we always want to bring it back on this podcast of the science of this. So what is the science of dignity and respect? Tell us.
Yeah, so there are a number of things that we can talk about. One is what social scientists call the dual pathway model of respect, and which is that as social animals, humans, we seek to satisfy two core motives of social life, which is striving for status, and that's really through earned respect, and the need to belong. We want to
Mhm.
belong to another group, again, because we're social, and that is owed respect. That's the sense that we have value amongst this group. So I think so that's the dual pathway of respect. And so when you start thinking about the science and why it's actually beneficial and important, there's actually a lot. And I think the reality is, unless we have some form of psychopathology, we all know why it's important to treat other people with dignity and respect.
Back me up a little bit. When I'm thinking about this, like the owed versus earned, like,
Yeah.
differentiate that a little bit more for me. I get the, like, Michael Jordan's earned respect, the owed. Like, is that you're sort of like, you need to respect your elders, like, but then also they've earned it because of their age and what they've gone through. Like, differentiate out those a little bit for me in
Hmm.
when they're talking about psychology of the earned versus the
Yeah.
owed. Like, I'm starting to blend those together. Like, oh well, it's a senior citizen. They've earned it through they're 80 years old and they've been through everything. And
Yeah. Yeah. So owed respect is this idea that all people have intrinsic value,
gotcha, gotcha, gotcha,
right?
gotcha.
that they have a right. They have rights. Everybody has a set of rights, And so then we respect that. We respect the fact that they have a desire to have their own life, a desire to be the best that they can be in whatever scenario it may be. Those sorts of philosophical ideas or ideals, that there's this culture maybe, and we respect that culture. It may be different in our culture. We may not understand
Gotcha.
it, but we respect the fact that these people have that culture, that these people have that background, and that's within their right to have that. And so we respect that. We honor that in a sense, right? As opposed to you did something, you thought something, you said something, whatever it may be, that was valued in some way by the person bestowing respect,
Mm.
right? So I think that if we try to boil it down, maybe owed respect is irrespective of an observer,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's as you're talking about that, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's almost like a universal, whereas the earned is like
It's contingent
based
on
on
the
the
observer.
viewer's value system. You've earned this because this is what I consider valuable. Like Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
people may say, I don't value a sports accomplishment at all. Like
Yeah, I
that's
mean, you're
no,
just putting a round ball through a metal hoop, man. Like,
I mean,
really?
very
Like,
well to be honest.
sure, yeah, a lot of skill in getting that ball through a hoop, but at the end of the day, like,
Yeah.
anyway, we don't
No,
want to go too
great
far.
point.
We'll get blown up in the comments by somebody who's. So back to the science, this
Yep.
idea of the science of respect, right? Before I kind of expound on that one thought, and this gets to some of the major issues I'm seeing in our society right now.
Mm.
When we withhold this idea of dignity and respect from everybody or from other people who are not like us, it seems to me that we're not only devaluing those people, we're dehumanizing them.
True.
Because if this idea, right, if respect is due to everyone because of something, the signature of divine in everyone, and you withhold that, you're saying they're not the same. They're not human, right? And that is abhorrent as a mode of operation, just generally. Additionally, since we're talking about leadership, you'll never be able to lead people if you do that. You may be able to coerce them, you may be able to force them, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
But you are not leading people when you do that.
Especially people who maybe not believe the same things you do. Exactly right.
Right, right. So that was something in my mind that I wanted to make sure I mentioned. Back to your question about research studies and things. If we look at some of the research on this, again, as you would imagine, there are tremendous benefits. There was a 2018 article in the Harvard Business Review by Marquette professor Christy Rogers, and she identified a number of those, and we'll put a link in the description and so forth. As far as we'll put the reference in there, and you can evaluate that. A good article that covers a lot of these ideas, but in particular, when people feel respected, they're more satisfied with, grateful for, and loyal to their organizations.
Huh.
Additionally, Additionally, they're more resilient. They cooperate more with other people. They perform better and are more creative and are more likely to take direction from their leaders. So that just in that, I mean, there's so much positive, and that makes sense because there's this book that's really pretty popular called Crucial Conversations. It's gone through a number of editions. Maybe it's the third edition now or something. But anyway, there are like 5 authors on that book. It's a good book. I recommend it to folks. Crucial Conversations again. But in that book, they said respect is like air. As long as it's present, nobody thinks about it. But if you take it away, it's all that people can think about. So some studies have shown that
Pretty good.
that 80% of employees who are treated disrespectfully spend a significant amount of their work time ruminating on that treatment, and about 50% deliberately decrease their work effort. And I think if you think about times that people have disrespected you, that can really bother you, for a long time. And I don't know about where you're from in Georgia, if it's the same as where I'm from in East Tennessee. East Tennessee is Appalachia, and Appalachia is an honor culture, okay? And so if you cross people from Appalachia, if you disrespect them, they don't forget. They ruminate on that, man, like crazy,
Same.
And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying, but that's the nature of the culture, of an honor culture. And the same is true of great examples of honor culture in Southeast Asia, okay? Those are honor cultures. And if you disrespect them, then that creates a major problem, right? And so then people are ruminating, and then they will intentionally sabotage and all this sort of stuff so that it really can cause major problems. So not respecting people scientifically, from the studies, not only wrong to do, it's also really detrimental to both, trying to lead and to try to accomplish our goals.
That's fascinating. Like, every time you were saying what the studies showed of what respect gives, it seemed like respect gives respect. Like, the things that you were saying from the mentees or the people being led, all those things seem to mount to respect. They're more likely to value the organization. They're more likely to follow what the leader's doing.
Yeah.
Like, all of those same, you're exactly right. It's like air. And we've talked about this before. Like, why do people leave organizations? It's not because of vacation time or money. It's because of vacation time and money because they don't feel valued.
Right.
And if you boil it down even one more, they don't feel respected for what they bring or what they do. Like, it every time you were saying that and saying what the study showed, I couldn't help but think that's why people leave organizations.
Yeah.
It's that feeling of not feeling valued, not feeling, in other words, respected. You're exactly right. Like, that's people ruminate on that. I've done it myself. Like, I feel disrespected and all I can think about is that, like, I did this and nobody
They
knew
don't
it.
want me here. They don't value what I'm doing,
Yes.
all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And that's just, it's cyclical, right? It doesn't cost us anything to respect people. We don't have to agree with them. Let's make that clear,
Mm.
right? Respecting somebody does not mean you're agreeing with them. In this day and age, a lot of people will say, if you respect somebody, that means you're agreeing with them. You're advocating for whatever their stance is. That's bogus. That is totally bogus.
100% agree.
That is a false dilemma.
False statement.
I can respect, again, I can respect your choice of college football teams. That doesn't mean I agree with
Why
it.
do you keep bringing this up?
It's just an easy example. Anyway, so I think this is, again, as I mentioned, I think it's timely and timeless. At the top of the podcast, it's timely because I feel like so many people in our society it's almost like they're being encouraged to disrespect other people, and that gets us nowhere but places that we don't want to be.
We talked a little bit about the what, like defining the what. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Dignity, respect. We talked about the why, the science behind it, like how you're a CEO of a corporation. Why should you do this? Well, simply profits. Like, you're going to have better employees. You're going to have better people you're leading. They're more likely to follow you. Like, it's simple. Now let's get to how I always like to do it with my children and in this podcast. How you made a compelling argument of what and why, but now how do we do this? Let's say we're somebody that does not naturally respect people. Our natural guard is to get up when we disagree with people and try to tell them why they're wrong and devalue them. Like, what if that's how our parents treated us and that's our natural inclination? Like, how do we, as leaders, trying to be better tomorrow than we are today, how do we do this? How do we do this, Tom?
Well, yeah, you're right. That's where we are in the podcast. That's what we always try to do, is give somebody a takeaway. Let me turn it around on you, because I want to get your thoughts. I have as I try to do, I have a list of ideas how to do this, but let me try to get your thoughts. And the way I would do that is to say, think about somebody or multiple people who've made you feel respected in your life. And what are the things that they did to accomplish that? And then just rattle those off to me.
Not to get too touchy-feely, but I felt heard. I
Yeah.
felt heard.
Okay.
I felt like I knew what I was saying was not in alignment with what they believed, but I felt heard. I felt heard. I felt listened to. Two, I felt valued. Like, that even though I didn't think they would act on what I was saying, or my preconceived notions were they weren't gonna follow what I say, they heard me and they valued what I was saying. And three is probably that they just sort of value me as a person. Like, they spent their time to hear me out. That's probably
Mhm.
into with one and two, but those are the three things that I sort of think about.
Those resonate with kind of what came to my mind as I thought about people who made me feel respected. So the first thing that kind of came to mind was they showed interest in me as a person.
Hmm.
You kind of hit on trying to get to know you, and so what's this person has a story. What's that story? And what's important to this person, right? They wanted to know what my story was, what's important to me, those sorts of things. I wasn't just a box to check. So again, that resonates with your feeling valued. They actually sought out my perspective, my opinion on
Mm.
things. I can't tell you how often I've had that happen and just feel so, it's like, wow, honored, not just respected, but even honored, right? Like, wow, this person cares what I think about this situation. If you want to make people feel respected, ask what their opinion is on something that's really important to you and listen to it. And that's the third thing. They listened attentively when I gave my opinion.
Mm.
They didn't, again, wasn't a checkbox. I'm just going to ask and pretend like it matters. So they listened attentively when I shared what I thought, and this all sort of flows, at least in my mind. The fourth thing is they didn't disregard or demean me or my
Mm.
perspective when they didn't agree with me. And that's something we're seeing so much right now, is that when somebody disagrees with you, you just demean them, right? And that when I felt respected, even if I knew, just like you were saying, even if I knew they vehemently disagreed with me, they took the time to say, I can appreciate that perspective, or I see why you say that. I don't agree with it, but I can understand how you came to that conclusion. Things like that, right? So that they're not demeaning me. They're letting me say my piece. On some level, they're respecting my right to have that perspective, but not necessarily validating it, right? And then a fifth thing that when I think about people that have made me feel respected, and this gets a little bit more into the earned respect side of things, they celebrated my accomplishments or the things that I brought to the group. And then the final thing was that they didn't see respect as a zero-sum game.
Hmm.
It was more of that they've got all the respect that in the world. It's just the more they give, the more they have to give, They weren't withholding it like it was some kind of, coin of approval, but rather they gave it liberally, and that made me feel respected. So those are the six things, that came to my mind as I thought about things that people did to help me or make me feel respected.
As you're talking about this, I'm reminded of something that happened at work fairly recently. I didn't think it would overlap into the respect, but I think it does. Is when we're talking about listening to be persuaded. Many people that write about this, but I think that is part of respect. Of like, you've got your own values, and the person speaking may be completely different values than you, but you are coming in with a mind listening to be persuaded. To do that, you almost have to respect the person speaking. Like, okay, I think I know what I know, but you know what? I respect this person. And if they present me with something different, I'm going to listen to this because of the deliverer. Who's delivering it? I respect them. I'm going to try to learn something new every day, be better tomorrow than I am today. What are they presenting? Let me listen to be persuaded. And maybe at the end, I still value what I value and I don't change my mind, but I'm not coming in with that mindset of closed-minded. That sort of keyed in for me when you were talking of that sort of, when you're like, what have people that have respected you in the past given you? When they're listening to be persuaded. They value what you're saying, period.
Yeah. What do we have that's more limited resource than time, right? This moment right now, as we're talking, as we're recording this podcast, if somebody out there is listening to the podcast, their most valuable resource is time, because you can't get that back, right? Once it's spent, it's gone. And we only have a certain amount of it. And so for somebody to stop and take the time to listen with a willingness to be persuaded is absolutely, I agree with you, absolutely demonstrates real respect. They don't have to agree. They don't have to be persuaded to be respectful. In fact, it's probably more respectful to listen to something that isn't persuasive and be able to still respect that person, and come away and say, I disagree, but I can respect that, than it is to just be to acquiesce to whatever it is they're saying. One thing I was thinking about, maybe in medicine, those of us in medicine, maybe we're predisposed to have a little bit better insight into, I don't know, I'm just kicking this around. I'm not trying to disparage anybody in any other field by any means. But I was just thinking about medicine. It's almost like, in my mind, an absolute necessity that we see the value in everybody else. Because when they roll through that door, it's not our job to determine whether or not they deserve
Mm.
us to take care of them. They're a human being, and our job is to stand in the way of death and do our best to help them be healthy and live the best life that they can with whatever skill set in medicine that we have, right? And that absolutely takes respecting people for their innate value.
I think you're absolutely right. Like, I think it's easy to see value in patients that remind us of our own family and our own situation. Oh, they're the same age as my kids, things like that. I think it's more difficult when you have a tougher time relating to them, but in every way, like when I talk to my patients, I tell them, like, listen, I'm going to treat your son as I would my own. And I mean that.
Mhm.
And I mean that, like, I will treat them. And it's that as leaders, I think that's the type of respect we have to show to everyone. Like, treat others as you would want to be treated. Like, listen to those who you would want to be listened to. Those type of things, I think those, I mean, we talk about the C's of leadership. This is character,
Mhm.
like respecting others, dignity of others. Like, this is a huge character. When people speak about great leaders, I think this is one of the things that they talk about.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at great leaders across history, certainly we don't put in that group people who disrespected everybody, who were mean to people intentionally, any of those sorts of things. It's people who respected others, treated them with dignity and respect, didn't necessarily agree with them, oftentimes didn't agree with them, I would say, because there are a lot of people out there who have a lot of ideas that are just out there. But that's their right to have out their ideas. And we're not going to persuade anybody by disrespecting them. Nobody. I feel like I could say that with a high degree of certainty. That seems oxymoronic because certainty is absolute. But anyway, nobody has ever convinced somebody by disrespecting them. It may be some psychological coercion or something, but you've never really convinced anybody. And our job as leaders is to influence others to achieve a common goal.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. Well, I think that'll be a good place to wrap up this conversation. Justin, thanks. Thanks for a good conversation. I feel like it was an encouraging conversation, informative, and helped hopefully our listeners and us have a better understanding of what it means to respect people and how we can go about doing it in a better way. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Science of Leadership. We hope today's discussion has inspired you and given you valuable insights to help you become a better leader. Remember, leadership is about helping those we lead do great things. It's a journey of continual growth and learning. When we embrace that journey with curiosity, courage, and humility, we can confront challenges, overcome barriers, and foster environments where everyone can succeed. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with others who are passionate about leadership. Until next week, keep leading with character, competence, caring, and communication. This is Tom Collins. Let's keep growing.